You've been told your whole life that saving money is the smart, responsible thing to do. So why are the most disciplined savers you know still completely broke? I'm talking about the people who skip the coffee, clip the coupons, and never miss a budget. They do everything right, and somehow they still feel like they are falling further behind every single year. Today I'm going to show you the brutal reason why and exactly how to fix it. And by the end of this video, you will never look at the cash sitting in your account the same way again. My name is Marcos, and I have spent the last decade obsessed with one strange question. Why do some people build real wealth while others save for 30 years and have almost nothing to show for it? Most financial advice just tells you to save more and spend a little less. But that advice is quietly keeping millions of people poor, and almost nobody is willing to say it out loud. If you want the real mechanics of how money actually grows, continue watching, because this video will change how you see every dollar. Stick with me because the very first section alone could be worth thousands of dollars to you. This is the conversation I genuinely wish someone had forced me to hear 10 years ago. Let me paint you a picture that might feel uncomfortably familiar. You open your banking app and there it is, a balance you worked years to build. Maybe it's $5,000, maybe it's $50,000. You feel a small flash of pride and then a much bigger wave of anxiety. Because deep down you know that number isn't really going anywhere. It just sits there year after year while everything around you keeps getting more expensive. The rent goes up, the groceries go up, and the price of simply existing keeps climbing. Meanwhile, your savings account pays you almost nothing in return. This is the silent trap that catches good, hardworking, responsible people. They confuse saving money with building wealth, and those two things are not the same. Think about that for a second because almost everyone gets this completely wrong. Saving is simply not losing money, while building wealth is actively multiplying it. One keeps you barely afloat, and the other one quietly carries you forward. Most people spend their whole lives perfecting step one and never even reach step two. And that one missing step is the entire reason so many disciplined savers stay broke. But here's the part that most people completely miss, and it might be the most important point in this entire video. The problem isn't that savers lack discipline. The problem is that they are playing a game that is mathematically designed for them to lose. Let's talk about the number that nobody at your bank really wants you to understand. It's called inflation, and it is quietly eating your money while you sleep. Here is how it actually works in real life. Imagine you saved exactly $20,000 and left it sitting in a normal savings account. That account might pay you 0.5% in interest if you are lucky, but inflation over the last few years has run closer to 4 or 5%. So while your balance technically stays the same, its real buying power is shrinking every single month. In 10 years, that $20,000 could buy what only about $13,000 buys today. You didn't lose a single dollar on paper, and yet you got dramatically poorer. That gap is not bad luck. It is simply how the whole system was designed. This is why savers feel like they're running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up. No matter how fast they save, the finish line just keeps quietly moving away. Let me give you a number that will put this in perspective. If you had kept $100,000 in cash since 1990, it would have lost more than half of its purchasing power by today. That same 100,000 would now buy what less than 50,000 bought back then. Half of your life savings gone without a single bad decision. Now here's where it gets really interesting, and this is something that will probably surprise you. The bank is not holding your money for free. They take your deposit, lend it out, and earn far more than the tiny interest they pay you back. Your deposit quietly becomes their loan, their mortgage, and their business empire. In other words, your savings are quietly building someone else's wealth. You are being responsible, and you are being quietly robbed at the very same time. Let me make this painfully concrete with one simple example. Picture someone who proudly saved $100 every single week for an entire decade. After 10 years of pure discipline, they have set aside around $52,000 in cash. But inflation quietly stole thousands of dollars of value from that jar while it just sat there. Now you might be thinking that there is nothing you can actually do about it. And while that feeling is completely understandable, it could not be further from the truth. Because once you see the game clearly, you can finally start playing it to win. So if saving cash is such a losing game, why do we cling to it so tightly? The answer lives deep in your brain, and it is far more powerful than logic. Psychologists call it loss aversion, and it is one of the strongest forces in human behavior. It has quietly shaped almost every financial decision you have ever made. Studies show the pain of losing $100 feels about twice as intense as the joy of gaining the same amount. So when you see cash sitting safely in your account, your brain rewards you with a feeling of control, and when you imagine investing it, your brain screams danger before you even finish the thought. This is the trap, and it is completely invisible to the person living inside it. You are not being irrational, you are just being deeply human. But your ancient survival instincts were never designed for a modern economy. Your brain treats a falling stock chart like a predator hiding in the tall grass. Thousands of years ago, that instinct kept your ancestors alive. Today, that exact same instinct quietly keeps you poor. It quietly whispers that doing absolutely nothing is the safest possible choice. But when it comes to money, doing nothing is almost never actually free. It wants you safe, and to your brain, safe means cash you can see and touch. But here is where most people mess this up, and I see it constantly. They mistake the feeling of safety for actual safety, and those two things can lead to completely opposite outcomes over a lifetime. Sitting in cash feels safe, but over a long enough timeline, it is one of the riskiest things you can do. Imagine standing perfectly still while the ground slowly sinks beneath your feet. You feel like you are not moving, but you are quietly losing height every single day. That is exactly what holding only cash does to your wealth over a couple of decades. Before you understand this, you protect your money by hiding it. After you understand this, you protect your money by putting it to work. One approach slowly bleeds value while the other quietly compounds it. And that single shift in thinking is worth more than any budgeting app you will ever download. Now let's talk about the difference that separates the broke saver from the quiet millionaire next door. It comes down to one word that almost nobody explains properly: ownership. A saver lends their money to a bank for almost nothing. The bank then uses that very money to buy and own things that grow in value. You get the crumbs, and they quietly keep the entire cake. Now multiply that one small unfairness across an entire lifetime of saving. Suddenly, that tiny gap becomes the difference between struggling and being truly free. An investor owns a piece of the businesses that actually drive the economy forward. When you own shares, every coffee sold and every product shipped quietly works for you. Let me show you what that looks like with two people who earn the exact same salary. The first person saves diligently, putting $500 a month into a savings account. The second person invests that same $500 into a simple index fund. For the first few years, they look almost identical, and the saver even feels a little smarter. After all, the investor's account jumps around while the saver's number stays perfectly calm. But here is something that might blow your mind. After 30 years, the saver has roughly $180,000. The investor, earning an average market return, has well over $1 million. Read that again because it is not a typo and it is not an exaggeration. Same income, same discipline, same monthly habit, and a difference of more than $800,000. The only thing that changed was whether their money was lending or owning. That single decision, repeated quietly for decades, was worth an entire fortune. This is the part nobody in finance actually gets paid to explain to you. Wealth isn't built by the amount you save, it's built by what your savings are allowed to do. A dollar saved sits perfectly still, but a dollar invested goes out and recruits more dollars. And every one of those new dollars goes out and recruits even more, again and again. That is the snowball that eventually rolls down the hill completely on its own. The savers spent 30 years protecting their money from the very growth that could have set them free, and the cruelest part is that they did everything they were ever told to do. I know exactly what you might be thinking right now. But Marcos, the market is risky, and it crashes all the time. And while there is some truth to that, the real data tells a very different story. Let me give you a number that honestly should be taught in every single school. If you had invested $10,000 in the broad U.S. stock market in 1980 and never touched it, you would have well over $1 million today. The person who did this never picked a single hot stock or timed a single trade. That is not a lottery ticket, that is just time and patience quietly doing their work. It is honestly the most boring strategy in the world, and that is exactly why it works. Here is where the math starts getting genuinely exciting. The market has lived through wars, recessions, crashes, and pandemics, and it has still climbed relentlessly upward over the long run. Think about how terrifying every one of those moments felt while people were living through them. And yet from a distance, each one became just another small bump on the road to higher ground. The crash of 2008 felt like the absolute end of the world to millions of people. Yet anyone who simply held on came out far wealthier on the other side. Every single crash in history has eventually become a small dip on a chart that keeps rising. But there is a catch that most people honestly never hear about. Research shows that missing just the 10 best days in the market over a few decades can cut your final wealth nearly in half. And those best days almost always happen right after the scariest crashes. The very moment everyone is selling in fear is usually the moment fortunes are quietly made. So the people who panic and run to cash miss the exact moments that build real wealth. The savers think they are avoiding risk, but they are actually locking in the biggest loss of all. They trade a temporary scary drop for a permanent quiet decline in their purchasing power. Time in the market, not timing the market, is what quietly turns ordinary salaries into real wealth. And there is one more reward that pure savers almost never get to taste. When you own enough of these businesses, they actually start paying you just for holding them. These payments are called dividends, and over time they can grow into a real second income. Imagine your money sending you a paycheck while you sleep, completely on its own. By now you might be realizing that this was never really about the money at all. Money is just the scoreboard, but the real game is the person who is playing it. It is about who you become when you finally understand how money actually works. A saver lives in a constant, exhausting state of quiet defense. Every expense is a threat, every month is a battle, and every emergency feels like a catastrophe. Their whole world keeps shrinking as they try to protect what little they have. But an investor learns to live on offense instead. They see their money as a team of tiny workers going out every day to earn even more workers. Their world keeps expanding as their money goes out and quietly brings back more. When you make this shift, something changes far beyond your bank account. You stop fearing the future and start building it on purpose. You move from constantly reacting to your money to actually directing it. You sleep better, you stress less, and you start making decisions from calm instead of panic. You become the kind of person who sees opportunity where everyone else only sees risk. And that identity, once you truly have it, compounds just like your money does. Confidence builds opportunity, opportunity builds wealth, and that wealth builds even more confidence. Suddenly, money stops being a source of constant fear and becomes a genuine tool for freedom. And that freedom slowly touches your career, your relationships, and your peace of mind. You stop asking, how do I just survive? And you start asking, how do I actually grow? The first real investment you ever make isn't the money, it is the brand new version of you. So let's go back to that banking app and that balance you worked so hard to build. That number was never meant to just sit there and slowly shrink away in the dark. It was meant to be planted, to grow, and to eventually work far harder than you ever could. Saving was only ever step one, and the savers who stay broke are the ones who never took step two. Step two is not complicated, it is just unfamiliar, and that quietly scares most people away. But you don't have to be one of them. You can start small, you can start scared, and you can absolutely start this week. The hardest part was never really the money, it was finally deciding to begin. Every wealthy investor you quietly admire was once standing exactly where you are right now. The only real difference is that they finally took the leap, and you still can too. Because the person you become while learning to invest is worth infinitely more than the money itself. If this changed the way you see your savings, watch the next video where I break down exactly how the banking system works